Well, howdy hey there. The other day, I was scrolling the Internet Archive animation and video section. I was looking for some old episodes of Dragon Ball, when something strange caught my eye. At first, it looked like an early episode of South Park. Can't really mistake that art style for anything else now, can you? Well, it was in that moment that I learned, yes, you can mistake it for something else. As my eyes went down to read the title, instead of saying South Park, it was a show I had never heard of before. A show called Block 13. So, naturally, my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked into it, skipped about to the middle point of the episode, and near immediately, I was met with, exactly what one would expect. A cheap knockoff with poor animation, bad sound effects, and a one-for-one replication of the South Park Boys. But there was one notable and extreme difference. They were speaking Arabic. What was this show? How did it even exist? Why did it exist? How did I get to such a low point that I was genuinely watching it? Well, to answer those questions, let's all fasten our seatbelts and dive into the ever so funny and uncanny world of cheap knockoffs. To start, what exactly makes something a knockoff? Is it just an off-brand version of an already existing intellectual property, which I will just call IP from this moment forward? Sort of. In many cases, something can be made fun of in the form of a parody. Weird Al didn't just knock off Beat It by the Prince of Pop. He changed it to become something else, something completely different, but not to replace it. And that is where I think the key difference is here. A knockoff is generally a cheap, low-budget, carbon copy of a well-established or well-known IP that pushes the boundary of legality to reach whatever profit they can. In most cases, they just rename the characters, change the plots here and there a wee bit, and boom, call it something else. B-movie? How about Plan B? Princess and the Frog? How about, I'm not joking, Frog and the Princess? Tomato, right? That's how I imagine the studios that make these think. But this then begs the next question. Why would anyone spend money on one of these things when there's real versions that exist? In most cases, it's not because they're being tricked into it. Rather, they don't really have any other choice. You see, a lot of the West's most popular productions have been outright banned for one reason or another in countries around the world. Countries that don't really like how the West goes about doing things. So, studios from these specific countries or regions capitalize on this, making knockoffs to cash in on the banned or heavily censored IP in the region. And this is the exact reason why my new favorite show exists. You see, back in the early 2000s, South Park was still fresh to the scene and only on its 4th season. But it was still the show we know today. A large topical joke of the 2000s was making fun of then dictator of Iraq, Saddam Hussein, and on a greater level, making fun of the religion of the region as well. But making fun of those two things was a very big no-no for the leaders of Middle Eastern countries at the time. One of whom was the leader of Kuwait, whose name I will not even try to pronounce, as he outright banned South Park from airing in his country. As a response, the director of Block 13, Nawaf Salam al-Shamari, sought to create an Arabic adaptation of the show for Islamic audiences in the region, with Comedy Central's permission, of course. The first season of Block 13 would air on December 12, 2000, and would continue to air until December 5, 2002. In total, there would be 3 seasons of the show. All 3 would air through the duration of Ramadan. And even after the show's cancellation, still continued to air in and around Kuwait annually. The show followed 5 main characters: Abood, the overweight jerk, Cartman; Ahmud, the level-headed one, Stan; Azuz, in a shocking twist, the not-Jewish version of Kyle; Saloon, the keffiyeh-wearing version of Kenny, very region-appropriate; and lastly, and my personal favorite name swap, Honey, who replaced, yes, Butters. Ha ha ha. The content of the show was pretty much exactly what you would expect from a carbon copy of South Park. The crude humor, the same visual gags, as I mentioned prior, the same characters, but even some of the same running jokes, like kicking the baby, or their version of Kenny dying in every single episode. But the part that shocked me the most was that this show was a complete hit. It ended up being one of the most popular shows in Kuwait at the time. I mean, no hate to Kuwait, but I'm sure the pickings there were pretty limited. It was immediately renewed for a second season after its initial airing. But 2 years into its production, Block 13 would switch to a new channel and would be canceled due to financial problems with the studio. The show still lived on in spirit, and the production staff came back together in 2022 to make the spiritual successor of the show, 13th Street, they really like that number if you can't tell, which is still airing in Kuwait today. As for my personal review of the show, it was okay. I think a lot of the humor from South Park is rather difficult to localize to a country whose regime just banned the source material. So you could kind of get the feeling that the creators, if you want to call them that, of Block 13 were trying really hard to bend the jokes targeted at a 2000s America into jokes that would, 1, make sense to an audience in Kuwait, but also 2, not get the show banned for the same reason as South Park. If I were watching the show at face value, it would probably be pretty bad, like a 2 out of 10 on the rat meter, but watching it knowing the context of the show, it actually becomes very funny. For the best viewing experience, I recommend you watch without any English subtitles and just try and follow along with whatever they're doing. The atrocious sound quality and bad animation of a Kuwaiti South Park knockoff feels like, well, a South Park joke about knockoffs. The feeling of the show is truly hard to describe. So if you are interested, it's free on the Internet Archive and partially on YouTube as well. Give it a watch, let me know what you think. There are thousands of other knockoffs out there of notable shows like the Georgian, country not state, version of The Simpsons. What a classic. And of course, the world of mockbusters, which I'll happily make a video about later. I hope you learned something today about Kuwaiti South Park, and I hope you don't forget to charge your phone tonight either. Bye-bye!